me, and I'd like to turn it over to them.
Thank you so much, Pravalika, for such an in-depth walkthrough on the process involved in applying to UGA and other colleges in general. Moving along, we're now going to have Shruti Verma from Columbia University share with us her presentation on college admissions and her journey to Columbia.
Hi everyone, my name, as you just heard, is Shruti Verma, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to speak with you all today on the subject of my journey to Columbia University. Just before I begin the presentation, I wanted to preface this by saying that I really have wanted to focus my time here talking about my story and my tangible and qualitative experiences before, after, and during the college application process. I don't give too much specific advice in terms of like logistical details, but if there are any questions that you think I'm well equipped to answer, then feel free to reach out to me at sv2611@columbia.edu after the presentation, and I'll be more than happy to offer any insight that I can. I want to start off by talking about my experience before college, particularly in terms of my high school experience. I'm going to be discussing my interests, my aspirations, and how those translated into actual functional involvements. I was fortunate enough to discover my passion for computer science when I was very young. My dad's a software engineer, so when I was little, I would always see him lugging around his laptop, and almost just out of pure curiosity for what he was doing on that thing for hours on end, I started signing myself up for free online classes to learn more about programming and web development and even cybersecurity and things like that. By the time I got to high school, then I knew that I wanted to get more involved in computer science because I loved it a lot. But of course, the word involved can be very ambiguous, right? What does involvement look like? I think a lot of people think that when you pinpoint the subject that you're interested in high school, what you should do is just take more and more classes or more and more courses that you can find on that subject. And even though that's helpful, and even though I took the likes of AP Computer Science and more online courses on more advanced topics in the field, I think another thing that's really important to do in high school is to get more practically involved in the fields that you're interested in. And the reason that this is important is twofold. First of all, in terms of the college application process, in my experience, it can be helpful. Colleges often look to see that you've demonstrated your knowledge in a field in more ways than just getting good grades on tests or maybe certifications that you can find online. They want to see that you're actually able to contribute to the field that you've selected as your primary interest. Secondly, if this is really a field that you're interested in and thinking about working in the future, then you want to get a taste early on of what that might look like, whether it be in industry or in academia. When you actually go on to, in my case, work in computer science, you're not going to be taking courses, right? You're not going to be just digesting information that other people give to you. You're going to have to actually practically put your knowledge to use and contribute something to the field that you've selected. And so seeing what that looks like can be helpful early on, because then you'll know if the field is actually for you. And so that's exactly what I did with computer science. I joined some competition teams to learn more about cybersecurity and digital forensics. I did some independent projects in computer science, and I was also a research intern at the Scripps Research Institute, where I learned about interdisciplinary applications of computer science for the very first time. And in fact, that experience was so valuable that the interdisciplinary applications I learned about, I pursue to this day. And so that's why I'm a very strong just proponent of like getting more functionally involved in the fields that you're interested in. Of course, from hearing all of this, you might think I was just a plain old computer science nerd in high school, but I actually had a lot of non-STEM interests as well. I was captain of our high school speech and debate team. I loved reading and writing, and so I was vice president of our school's writing help and tutoring center. I was also very politically involved. During my time as a speech and debate captain, I learned that I liked discussing political subjects and expressing my views on them, so I started to get involved in organizations. On the right-hand side, you can see a snapshot story I had from the day I was working at the polls during the midterm elections in 2018. Something I want to touch on really quickly here is that a lot of people actually encouraged me to discontinue these non-STEM interests and involvements. They said, you know, you already know you're going to work in computer science and technology on. There's no point in spending time writing speech and debate cases when you could be working on more projects that'll make you stand out more in terms of computer science applicant for colleges. This was really troubling for me to hear because these non-STEM interests, even if they weren't necessarily correlated to what I wanted to do like for my career, made me happy and I really enjoyed doing them. So ultimately I decided because they made me happy to continue pursuing them, but I'm actually going to come back to this topic a little bit later because this was something that really especially troubled me during the college application process. Finally, one last thing I wanted to touch on is that I did a lot of volunteering when I was in high school, specifically on the topic of helping girls get more involved in computer science. I started a summer coding camp and spoke at some radio talk shows about my experience as a girl in computer science and how I think other girls might be encouraged to get more involved in the field. I joined some larger organizations. The reason I'm highlighting this is because I think a lot of people volunteer in high school just for the sake of volunteering. But ultimately, I think that the most enriching and valuable thing to do is find a cause that you really, really care about and get as deeply involved in it as possible, because then you'll find yourself doing things because you love them and because you care about them, and not just because you need to collect up volunteer hours. So that's another thing that I think other people should consider in high school, that you don't just need to join the volunteering clubs and go to the food bank every now and then, or go to this organization every now and then and rack up hours, but you should really contribute to things that you care about. Now, in terms of the college application process, I'm going to start out by talking about my biggest worry. I don't know if any of you have heard of this, you probably have, but when I was applying to college, I read online over and over again that colleges were looking for students with a big spike as opposed to well-rounded students. And what that meant, what those articles explained, is that colleges want to collect the best computer scientists out there and want to collect the best mathematicians, the best debaters, the best swimmers, the best artists. They don't want someone or like one person who's kind of good at a lot of things. They want a bunch of people who are each the very best in their field. And this made me a little bit nervous because during high school in my past 3 years, I had already decided I'm going to continue pursuing all of my interests, even those that I'm not necessarily going to make a career out of. And because of that, because I had done that, I admittedly hadn't been able to win the biggest computer science competition out there or publish 3 research papers or something like that. And so I thought, well, I'm what am I supposed to do now? I made that decision because pursuing non-STEM interests made me happy, but now I don't have a big spike. Something I was considering was maybe I'll just leave everything humanities related that I did off of my application, and I'll just talk about my computer science pursuits and them to the point that they become my big spike. And I really thought about this for a long time, but as I kept considering it, I realized that if I was to do this, the person I'd be presenting on the application wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be my genuine and authentic self, which means that if I was to be accepted, the college that accepted me wouldn't really be accepting me. They'd be accepting a manufactured version of me. And this could have a variety of consequences. Perhaps that college then is the best fit. I know some other presenters have talked about what fit means. Perhaps that college is better for those students who really only have one interest, which means when I would go to that college because they had accepted me, I would be encouraged to only pursue one interest and would have to give up other things. So ultimately, I decided I'll just accept my story. I won't leave anything off of my application. I'll accept who I am and what I've done and just frame it in the best way possible. And so that's what I spent the summer before my senior year and then my senior year working on. I created a common application essay that was a little bit weird. I talked about Frankenstein, which is one of my favorite books. I talked about big tech companies and my experience working in computer science. And I also brought in my volunteer work with women in computer science. And I was able to tie all of these things together and just present it as who I was. And ultimately, it's proved useful because now I am a sophomore at Columbia University, as you've learned, and it is the perfect fit for me. Everyone I've met at Columbia University is exactly like me. They also have a variety of different interests. My roommate freshman year, for example, is like this world-renowned vocalist. She went to a performing art high school, but she also won a bunch of research competitions in the field of environmental engineering. Another person I met, one of my close friends, he wants to grow up to be the president of Venezuela. He's really passionate about politics, but he also cares about economics, for example, and is pursuing that to begin off his career. So ultimately, by presenting and accepting my authentic self, I was able to get accepted into a college that appreciates my varied interests and the fact that I was well-rounded. At Columbia University, I'm pursuing a computer science major specializing in intelligent systems and a double minor in econ and poli-sci. I've continued my varied involvements. I'm still in in computer science as well as poli-sci related organizations. I've also pursued some entrepreneurship. That's the other great thing about Columbia, is that because there are so many people with so many different interests, you're really able to explore some of the things that you might not have had the opportunity to do before. More specifically, some of the things that I've done is I've had the opportunity to found my own startup and put it through a startup accelerator. I also write for the Columbia Political Review, which I've really, really enjoyed. Some of the more fun involvements that I've had include being on the board for the Hindu Students Organization, as well as on the outreach board for the Society of Women Engineers, which I really appreciate because I get to still keep working on my passion of bringing more women into computer science. In terms of my favorite memories, if you don't know, Columbia University is located in New York City, which is fantastic because you get to explore the city and there's so many great sites to go see. The Met is like 10 minutes away from our campus, and we go there a lot, as well as Central Park. So that has been really amazing. Finally, in terms of general advice, if I had to give you 3 pieces of general advice, I'd say, first of all, do what you love, not what you think you need to do, because you'll just be happier that way. And if you're happier, you're going to be more successful. Finally, I'd say be a leader, not a follower. So we talked about earlier how involvement can be more practical than just taking more courses. And not only that, but the things that you do get involved in, try to get involved in to the largest extent possible. Don't just participate in an organization, see if you can take on more responsibility and become a leader in that organization. If it's something, and that's easier when it's something you're passionate about, again. So don't pick things that you think you need to do, pick things you love, and you'll just naturally want to take on more responsibility in them. And then finally, most importantly, present yourself authentically in your application, and you'll end up where you're meant to end up. I think that's the cheesy thing a lot of people say, is that you'll end up going to the college that you were meant to go to, even if you have to transfer to get there potentially. But the only way you can do that is if you present yourself on your application as who you really are, and the college accepts you for who you really are. And that's my presentation. Again, I think we're having questions maybe at the end, but if you have any that you think you would like me to answer or offer insight on, please contact me at sv2611@columbia.edu. I'm more than helpful to help in any way that I can, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. That was a great presentation. Very helpful information. We appreciate your taking time out of your schedule for this. Next, we'll have Mr. Ram Prakash, who graduated from Georgia Tech, who will give us his presentation on pathways to